What happens when a black CEO challenges the system on live TV? When his success is questioned, not for its merit, but for his race, how does he respond? Jordan Carter, the CEO of Zentech, isn't afraid to confront the biases that threaten his rise. Will he let the system break him, or will he shatter it instead? Watch how this bold stand changes everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us at H2 Black Thread for more powerful stories.
It was an ordinary afternoon when Jordan Carter, CEO of Zentech, sat in his New York office, eyes glued to his computer screen. His tech company had been making waves, especially after securing a $150 million defense contract with the U.S. government, which was no small feat. Zentech wasn't just another tech firm. It was one of the few black-owned companies breaking through in an industry dominated by legacy white corporations. Success had been hard-earned, and Jordan knew how easy it was for people to dismiss his achievements because of his race. He'd already dealt with countless emails, most of which were from investors, partners, or potential collaborators. But one particular email caught his eye, a formal invitation from the producers of The Morning Update, a well-known talk show. They wanted him to come on and discuss diversity in business. He'd been on similar shows before, but he wasn't sure about this one. On the surface, it looked like a great opportunity to showcase his company's success, but Jordan had learned over the years that shows like these weren't always as supportive as they seemed. The media often trotted out black entrepreneurs for a quick, feel-good segment, but it rarely went deeper. The audience would see a brief story of success, but no real conversation about the challenges faced by entrepreneurs of color, especially when the industry was so entrenched in biases. Despite his hesitation, Jordan couldn't deny the allure of national exposure. This could be a way to elevate Zentech and its contributions beyond the typical diversity talk. He turned to his assistant, Tasha, who had been with him through thick and thin, always able to provide a balanced perspective. "I got an invite from The Morning Update," he said, glancing at Tasha. "They want me on the show to talk about diversity and my company's recent success." Tasha, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "The usual stuff, huh? Another segment about the token black entrepreneur making it big," Jordan chuckled, but the truth stung. That's often how it went. The media loved a success story, especially a black success story, but it was almost always framed in a way that suggested it was an exception rather than a result of hard work. "You know how these shows are," Tasha said, leaning back in her chair. "They love a success story, but they love tearing one down even more." "I don't know, Jordan. You've got a lot on your plate. You sure you want to do this?" Jordan nodded, staring at the email. He thought about it for a moment. This could be different. The show had acknowledged the success of Zentech's recent contract, something rare in a media landscape often quick to dismiss black businesses. This could be a chance to set the record straight, to talk about how he earned his place at the table. "I'll handle it," he said. "It's exposure. Let's see what they have to offer." Tasha was still unsure. "Just don't let them bait you. You know how they love to twist things." Jordan smiled, appreciating her caution. "I know. But if they think they're going to bait me into saying something controversial, they're in for a surprise." The day of the interview arrived, and Jordan walked into the studio of KXNT in Los Angeles with a sense of both anticipation and wariness. The studio, like most, was bustling with activity, but it felt sterile and impersonal to him. He had been in and out of many such studios over the years, and they all felt the same, like places where stories were packaged and sold to an audience, not real conversations. As he entered the green room, the producer greeted him briefly. She barely looked up from her clipboard as she handed him a microphone. "Mr. Carter, thanks for being here. We'll mic you up in 5. Jordan nodded, his mind already shifting into game mode. There was no warm welcome, no casual chat. It was all business. He knew the drill. Get in, get the job done, and don't let the producers get the best of him. The assistant who powdered his face didn't offer any pleasantries either. She worked with a detached efficiency that reminded him of the cold business of television. As he sat in the makeup chair, his eyes wandered to the monitor above him. The live feed of the show showed a segment about celebrity scandals, followed by a cooking demo. Then came the next teaser. Coming up next, the black tech boom. Is it talent or special treatment? Jordan clenched his jaw. There it was, the angle. He wasn't just there to talk about Zen Tech's success. He was being used to further a narrative about diversity, about whether or not his rise was due to merit or some form of special treatment. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. He had prepared for this. He knew what they wanted from him, but he wasn't going to give them the sound bites they expected. This was his chance to say something that mattered. It was time for the media to hear the real story. The set of the morning update was designed to feel warm and inviting, soft blues and golds. But as Jordan took his seat across from Vanessa Horn, the host, it felt anything but welcoming. Vanessa had a reputation for asking tough questions, and she wasted no time getting into it. Her smile was practiced, but Jordan could see the underlying skepticism in her eyes. "Jordan Carter," Vanessa began, her voice smooth, "CEO of Zen Tech, a true American success story." Jordan gave a polite nod. "Appreciate you having me." Vanessa leaned in slightly, adjusting her cue cards. "Let's get right into it. Your company recently landed a $150 million government contract, beating out some of the biggest names in tech." "That's impressive." Jordan had heard this before, the build-up, the attempt to flatter to make him feel comfortable before the real questions came. He stayed calm, maintaining his professional demeanor. "It was a long process, but yeah, we put in the work," he said. "We developed a security encryption system that outperformed our competitors. Simple as that." Vanessa crossed her legs, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Some have called it groundbreaking," she said, pausing for effect. "But others have raised questions." Jordan tensed. He knew what was coming next. She flipped through her notes and continued. "Some industry experts say Zen Tech benefited from certain federal diversity incentives, that companies like yours get an edge in these contracts because agencies are looking to diversify their vendors. Some even suggest this wasn't just about being the best, but about meeting a quota." There it was, the question that Jordan had anticipated. The suggestion that his success was somehow tied to diversity programs, not his company's merit. Jordan didn't flinch. "I've heard that argument before," he said, leaning forward slightly. "It's funny, though, when a black entrepreneur wins, it's because of diversity. But when a legacy firm run by the same families for generations lands those same deals, nobody questions it." The air in the studio seemed to shift. The producers behind the cameras exchanged looks. Vanessa remained calm, but her expression tightened. "So you're saying race played no role at all in your success?" Jordan smiled slightly. "Let me ask you this. When SpaceX won its NASA contracts, was it because Elon Musk met a diversity quota? When Jeff Bezos landed government deals for Blue Origin, was it because of his background? Or do we only ask that question when the CEO looks like me?" Vanessa's smile faltered, just for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure, shifting the conversation to yet another line of questioning. This wasn't going to be easy, but Jordan wasn't about to back down. Jordan Carter stepped into KXNT studios with a sense of familiarity. The green room felt sterile and rushed, the usual pre-interview chaos of assistants running around. It wasn't his first time in front of a camera, but there was always something off about these environments. The small talk, the over-preparedness, it all felt like a performance. As he sat in the makeup chair, Jordan caught a glimpse of the show on the monitor. The first segment was lighthearted, focusing on celebrity gossip. Then came the next teaser, the black tech boom. Is it talent or special treatment? His gut tightened. He knew exactly where this conversation was headed. A young producer approached him, speaking in a rushed tone. "Mr. Carter, thanks for being here. We'll mic you up in 5." Jordan nodded, trying to stay composed, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being ushered in for something more than a conversation about Zen Tech's success. This wasn't just about his company. It was about him, his race, his background, and whether his achievements were a result of merit or diversity. The set of the morning update was designed to feel warm with soft blues and golds, but Jordan couldn't shake the coldness of the situation. As he took his seat across from Vanessa Horn, the host, he knew this wouldn't be a casual chat. Vanessa was known for asking tough questions, and she wasted no time getting to the point. "Jordan Carter," she began, her tone polished, "CEO of Zen Tech, a true American success story. Your company recently secured a $150 million government contract, beating out some of the biggest names in tech. That's impressive." Jordan gave a slight nod, keeping his expression neutral. "Thanks. We've worked hard for it," Vanessa continued, "but some people have questioned your success. Specifically, there's talk that diversity programs gave your company an advantage. Some even say that Zen Tech's success is more about meeting a quota than true merit. What do you say to that?" Jordan's jaw tightened. He had been preparing for this. The question wasn't about the deal or his company's achievements. It was about his race, and how the media liked to twist the narrative when a black entrepreneur succeeded. "I've heard that argument before," Jordan replied, leaning forward slightly. "But when a black entrepreneur wins, it's because of diversity, right? But when a company run by legacy white families wins, nobody questions it." Vanessa raised an eyebrow, maintaining her cool. "So you're saying race had no role at all in your success?" Jordan didn't flinch. "Let me ask you this, Vanessa. When SpaceX won its NASA contracts, was it because of a diversity quota? When Blue Origin landed government deals, was it because of Jeff Bezos's background, or was it simply because of his company's capabilities? We don't question those successes, but we always question mine." The air in the studio shifted. Vanessa's gaze narrowed, but she pressed on. "So, you don't believe diversity programs play a role in leveling the playing field for minority businesses?" Jordan shook his head, the frustration simmering beneath the surface. "Diversity programs help, yes, but they exist because the playing field has never been level in the first place. I had to work twice as hard just to get a seat at the table. That's the reality." Vanessa paused, then changed the subject. "Let's talk about your background. You grew up in Detroit, raised by a single mother, attended public schools. You worked your way up from nothing. That's an inspiring story. But how does someone from that background, without Ivy League connections, secure contracts that billion-dollar companies fail to land? Some might wonder how you made it without any help." Jordan met her gaze directly. "It's called work. I worked 3 jobs while earning my engineering degree. I didn't have the luxury of family connections. I built my company from the ground up. That's the help I got." For a moment, Vanessa's expression flickered. She wasn't expecting such a direct response. She quickly adjusted, but Jordan could see the subtle shift. This wasn't going the way she'd planned. The narrative she wanted to control was slipping away from her. She continued, "But still, some would argue that programs like affirmative action, minority grants, and government incentives have opened doors that weren't opened decades ago. Are you saying those don't matter?" Jordan leaned in, his voice steady. They matter in leveling the playing field. But the truth is, the system was designed to keep people like me out. These programs are a response to that, not a reason for success. I don't get a free pass just because I'm black. I had to earn every step. The room fell silent for a beat. Vanessa shuffled her cue cards, but the tension was palpable. This wasn't a comfortable conversation anymore. It was a challenge. Vanessa, trying to regain control of the discussion, shifted her approach. So you're saying that black entrepreneurs have to fight harder than others? Jordan smiled tightly. Exactly, and that's something people like you don't always see. You look at my success and ask if it's because of some program. You don't ask which old money bank helped fund a white-owned startup or which family connections got them into Stanford. We're always asked if we deserve our success, but never if someone else does. Vanessa's posture stiffened. She wasn't prepared for this. Her next question was hesitant, more cautious than before. So, you don't think there's a place for diversity initiatives in business? You think it's all just about individual hard work? Jordan shook his head. Diversity initiatives help, but they don't replace the fact that the system has always been stacked against people of color. I'm not saying diversity shouldn't exist, but don't mistake opportunity for equality. We still don't get the same chances. Vanessa, now visibly trying to regain the narrative, took a deep breath and said, "Let's focus on your future then. What's next for you and Zen Tech?" Jordan took a deep breath, knowing this interview wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about fighting a much bigger battle, one that didn't fit neatly into a soundbite. Zen Tech is just getting started. We're working on more defense contracts and I'm not going anywhere. But the real work is changing the system, and that's what I'm focused on. The tension in the room was thick, the interview no longer about small talk or a success story. This was real, this was the truth. Jordan had said his piece and the message was clear. Success didn't come with a diversity card. It came with blood, sweat, and relentless determination. The tension in the studio had shifted. What started as a seemingly friendly interview was now a sharp confrontation. Vanessa Horn wasn't letting up. She leaned forward, the practiced smile on her face replaced by a more serious expression. Jordan could tell she had shifted into a different mode, one that wasn't about exploring his company's success, but about questioning his legitimacy, his right to achieve such success. "So, Jordan," Vanessa continued, her voice smooth but increasingly probing, "you've shared a bit about your background, but let's dig deeper. You grew up in Detroit, raised by a single mother, in a community with fewer opportunities than most. How does someone with no Ivy League connections, no family wealth or influential networks, go from that to landing $150 million government contracts, beating some of the biggest names in tech? How did you get here, really?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. It wasn't just about his rise to the top. It was about questioning whether a black man from a struggling neighborhood had truly earned the right to sit at the table with industry giants. Jordan could feel the subtle judgment in her words, the unspoken challenge of whether he was really worthy of such success, or if there was some unspoken help along the way that others didn't have access to. For a split second, Jordan considered the question. Was Vanessa asking this because she genuinely wanted to understand his story, or was she searching for a crack, an excuse to dismiss his achievements? Either way, he wasn't about to let her frame his journey as some fluke. He had fought too hard to get to where he was. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "How did I get here, Vanessa? I worked triple shifts while earning my engineering degree. I slept in my office because I couldn't afford rent. There was no trust fund, no family connections to open doors for me. Every inch of progress I made came through hard work, determination, and a refusal to back down. That's how I got here. Vanessa's expression faltered for just a moment. She had expected him to give a different kind of answer, something that might offer her a way to twist the narrative. But Jordan wasn't giving her that chance. His words were clear and uncompromising. This wasn't a story about being lucky or benefiting from a system that handed out favors to the underprivileged. It was a story about sweat, sacrifice, and resilience. I built my company from the ground up, Jordan continued, his gaze locked with hers, unwavering. There was no silver spoon, no handouts. Just a vision and the belief that I could make something of myself. No matter how many times the system tried to shut me out, I had to prove I was worth the space I took up, just like every other Black entrepreneur trying to break through. Vanessa took a moment to process his words. The silence in the room was thick. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. Jordan had flipped the script. He wasn't playing the victim, wasn't leaning into any of the narratives that people typically use to explain away Black success. No, Jordan was owning his story, and that made Vanessa's usual line of questioning feel inadequate, almost unfair. But she wasn't backing down. If anything, the challenge had only made her more determined to find a way to dig deeper, to uncover something she could use to shape the story in a way that fit her agenda. She shuffled her cue cards, glancing at them before asking, "So you're saying the system didn't play a part? You're saying that the barriers Black entrepreneurs face, the discrimination, the lack of funding, the closed doors, didn't impact your journey at all?" Jordan's jaw clenched. He could feel his patience wearing thin, but he kept it in check. He knew this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about setting the record straight, not just for himself, but for every Black entrepreneur who had been told their success was an anomaly, a fluke. The system absolutely played a role, Jordan said firmly, leaning in, his voice cutting through the tension. It plays a role every day for every Black entrepreneur. We're denied loans at twice the rate of white business owners. We receive less than 2% of venture capital funding. So, don't try to tell me the system doesn't play a role in shaping who gets to succeed and who doesn't. But that doesn't mean I didn't earn my success. That doesn't mean I didn't put in the work, fight through every door that was closed in my face. There was no mistaking the intensity in his words. Vanessa's gaze softened for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. She had asked the tough question, but Jordan wasn't about to let her dodge the harder truths. "So you think all Black entrepreneurs have to work twice as hard?" she asked, her voice slightly quieter now, as though considering his point for the first time. Jordan nodded slowly. "Absolutely. We have to work twice as hard to even be considered. We have to prove ourselves twice as much just to be taken seriously. And even then, there are always those who want to dismiss us as being lucky, as if our achievements are the result of some quota, some program that's there to make us feel good. But here's the truth, Vanessa, I am exceptional at what I do. My company is exceptional, and that's why we're here, not because of any diversity quota, but because we earned it." There was another pause, longer this time. The weight of Jordan's words hung in the air. Vanessa seemed to be processing them, but Jordan could see the internal struggle in her expression. She was trying to reconcile the narrative she wanted to tell with the reality Jordan was laying bare. Vanessa shifted in her seat, clearly trying to regain some control of the conversation. "So, are you saying that the systemic challenges Black entrepreneurs face are just part of the process? Are they something we should just accept as the way things are?" Jordan shook his head slowly. "No, I'm saying that those challenges shouldn't exist at all. The system is broken, Vanessa. We shouldn't have to work twice as hard just to get a seat at the table, but that doesn't mean we give up. That doesn't mean we stop pushing, stop fighting. I'm not here to accept the system. I'm here to change it." Vanessa's expression remained neutral, but Jordan could tell that his words were making her uncomfortable. For once, she wasn't the one in control of the narrative. The room was quiet, the kind of silence that usually followed a powerful statement. But this silence wasn't the result of awkwardness. It was the result of truth. The conversation wasn't over, but in that moment, Jordan knew he had made his point. He wasn't going to let anyone question his worth, his intelligence, or his right to be successful. The battle wasn't just about him anymore. It was about changing the entire conversation about race and success in this country. Vanessa looked back down at her cue cards, then up at him. "Let's talk about the future then. What's next for you and Zen Tech?" Jordan smiled, the fire still burning in his chest. "What's next is that we keep breaking barriers. We keep pushing the limits. We keep proving that no matter how hard they try to block us out, we will find a way to succeed." The tension had lifted, but the message was clear. Jordan was far from done, and neither was the fight for equity. The interview had reached a boiling point. Vanessa Horn was no longer just asking questions. She was probing, pushing, searching for a crack in Jordan Carter's armor. But as each question got sharper, so did his responses. The tension in the room was palpable now, the kind of electric silence that comes when someone has the courage to say something that could change the conversation forever. Vanessa, sensing she wasn't getting the answer she was hoping for, leaned in even closer. "So, Jordan," she began, her tone shifting from neutral to more pointed, "you talk about breaking barriers, but some people would argue that your success comes at the expense of others. They say black entrepreneurs like you are playing the diversity card, that your achievements aren't based on merit alone, but on programs designed to create opportunities for minorities. Do you think that's true?" Jordan felt his jaw tighten. There it was. The insinuation that his success wasn't a result of his own capabilities, but instead some form of preferential treatment, a handout. It was a familiar accusation, one that he had encountered more times than he cared to admit. But this time, he wasn't going to let it slide. This time, he would speak his truth, the way it needed to be said. He took a deep breath, looking directly into Vanessa's eyes. "Let's get something straight, Vanessa," he said, his voice calm but filled with an undeniable intensity. "This whole idea that black entrepreneurs are just playing the diversity card is a narrative that needs to end. When a white CEO lands a big contract, nobody questions whether they deserved it. But when a black entrepreneur like me lands a deal, suddenly the question is, did you get this because of some quota? Or was it because of your talent? That's the problem." The words hung in the air, sharp and clear. Vanessa blinked, taken aback by the force of Jordan's response. She wasn't expecting this kind of direct confrontation. Jordan continued, his words gaining strength. "I've built Zen Tech from the ground up. I didn't have any family connections. I didn't have the legacy networks that many of these white-owned companies rely on. What I had was a vision, a work ethic, and a belief that I could succeed. But every time I break through, people like you ask if it's because of affirmative action or diversity programs. Why is that? Why is my success always met with skepticism?" Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but Jordan didn't give her the chance. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. "Let me tell you something," he said, his voice steady but firm. "The truth is, I've had to work twice as hard to get to this point. I've had to fight for every opportunity, every contract, every chance to prove myself. And when I do prove myself, people still ask if I'm getting a free pass. That's not about diversity. That's about systemic racism. It's about a system that has always tried to keep people like me out. But I'm still here, and I'm still winning. Not because of some diversity program, but because of the hard work and determination I've put in." The room was silent for a moment, the gravity of Jordan's words settling in. Vanessa looked at him, her expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Was it surprise? Or maybe the realization that she was dealing with a man who wasn't going to back down? She regrouped, trying to shift the conversation again, but Jordan wasn't done. He could feel the weight of what he was saying, and he wasn't going to let this moment pass without making it count. "Let's be real for a second," he said, his voice unwavering. "When SpaceX secures a government contract, no one questions whether Elon Musk met a diversity quota. When Jeff Bezos lands deals with the government, it's not because of some minority initiative. But when a black CEO wins a deal, the first question is always, did you get that because of diversity? Why? Because the system doesn't expect people like me to succeed at this level. And that's the real issue here." Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she remained quiet, absorbing his words. Jordan could tell she was wrestling with the implications of what he was saying. This wasn't just about his company or his career anymore. It was about a larger conversation, one that challenged the very foundations of how success was defined in this country. Jordan leaned back in his chair, his expression calm but resolute. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm not asking for a free pass. What I'm asking for is a level playing field. I'm asking for people to stop assuming that when a black man succeeds, it must be because of a handout. It's because I worked for it. It's because I earned it." Vanessa sat back in her chair, clearly taken aback by the directness of his words. There was no turning back now. Jordan had turned the tables. He wasn't just defending his company. He was exposing the systemic racism that had always been lurking beneath the surface, the very biases that questioned the success of black entrepreneurs at every turn. "And here's the real kicker," Jordan added, his voice quiet but firm. "Even when I do succeed, I'm still seen as a token. I'm the exception, not the rule, but let's be clear. There's nothing exceptional about what I've done. It's what any qualified person could do if given the same opportunities. The difference is, people like me are always questioned, always scrutinized, while others are given the benefit of the doubt." The words stung, but they were the truth. Vanessa didn't have a response. She had come into this interview expecting to ask tough questions, to catch him in some vulnerability, but Jordan had turned it back on her, and on the system that perpetuated these biased views. The room was still, almost too still. The crew behind the cameras exchanged glances, unsure of how to move forward. The interview had taken a turn no one had expected, and now it felt like it was no longer just a conversation. It was a reckoning. Vanessa took a breath, her voice lower now. "So, you're saying that black entrepreneurs like you are always under more scrutiny? That the system is rigged?" Jordan nodded. "Yes, and it's not just about me. It's about everyone who's been kept out because of their race, their background, their upbringing. The system isn't built for people like me to succeed, but I'm here anyway, and that's the point." Vanessa finally nodded, a slight shift in her expression. "I hear you, Jordan, but how do we fix this? How do we change a system that's been in place for so long?" Jordan didn't hesitate. "It starts with conversations like this. It starts with people like you asking the hard questions, not just about success, but about why we have to prove ourselves more than others. It's about accountability. And it's about making sure that the next generation of entrepreneurs doesn't have to work twice as hard just to get the same opportunities." The conversation had reached its peak, and while the room still felt heavy with the weight of what had been said, Jordan knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something bigger. Within hours of the interview's conclusion, the ripple effects were already spreading. Jordan Carter's powerful words, his raw honesty about the systemic barriers faced by black entrepreneurs, had captured the attention of millions. As soon as the segment aired, social media erupted in a flurry of reactions. Clips of his sharp responses were shared across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, creating an overwhelming wave of support from people who had long been silent, unable to put their frustrations into words, until now. Hashtags like Truth Hurts, Black Entrepreneurs Matter, and Level the Playing Field began trending. In comments and tweets, people applauded Jordan for his courage and clarity, for exposing the uncomfortable truth about the biases baked into the system. They saw his interview not just as a defense of his company, Zen Tech, but as a battle cry for all marginalized voices in business. However, as with any viral moment, the response was not universally positive. The same platforms that supported Jordan were quickly flooded with criticism. Pundits and talking heads from across the political spectrum began weighing in, each trying to cast his remarks in a light that would either invalidate his message or frame it as an overreaction. A few influential figures in the tech world openly questioned his tone, accusing him of playing the race card in a way that they felt hurt the progress toward a post-racial society. They claimed his words were divisive, that he was fueling an us vs. them mentality instead of promoting unity. Corporate media outlets, as expected, fueled this narrative, with pundits declaring Jordan's comments as polarizing and unproductive. The backlash was swift and fierce. Some of Jordan's corporate partners began to distance themselves. Several investors hesitated, concerned about the potential fallout from their association with him. A few even went so far as to quietly pull their support, fearing that Jordan's public stand on systemic inequality would harm their business relationships. It was a harsh reminder of just how fragile an entrepreneur's position could be in a world where success was still often dictated by corporate interests and mainstream approval. Despite the threats and the pressure mounting against him, Jordan remained resolute. The backlash wasn't easy to ignore. He had always been a strong leader, but seeing some of his closest business partners waver in their support was a tough pill to swallow. Tasha, his trusted assistant and closest advisor, had seen it too. She had been reading through emails and calls, many of which were filled with threats, some veiled, others not so much. "Jordan, we've already got a flood of messages coming in," Tasha said one afternoon, her voice tinged with concern. "Some of our investors are pulling out. They don't like the heat you're bringing on them. What's your plan here?" Jordan rubbed his temples. The stress was starting to show. He had never been one to shy away from a challenge, but this felt different. This wasn't just about his business. This was about something much bigger, the fight against the deeply embedded racism in the industry. It was about proving that success wasn't just reserved for the privileged few, but something that anyone with the right talent, drive, and determination could achieve, no matter their background or skin color. "I won't back down," Jordan said finally, his voice calm but firm. He stood up from his desk, looking out at the New York skyline. "This fight isn't just about Zen Tech. It's about making sure the next generation of entrepreneurs doesn't have to deal with the same garbage I did. It's about leveling the playing field, not just for me, but for everyone who's been told their success doesn't count." Tasha nodded, understanding the gravity of what Jordan was saying, but she was also practical. "I know you won't back down. But you have to think about the business side too. There's a lot at stake here. You're going to need a strategy, something to keep the momentum going without alienating everyone." Jordan turned back to face her, a determined look in his eyes. "That's exactly what we'll do. We won't just sit here and let the conversation die. I'm using this moment. I'm going to keep fighting, not just for Zen Tech, but for the future of Black entrepreneurs everywhere. We're going to build a platform that challenges the status quo. We'll continue to show up, continue to push for change, and continue to lead by example. The media firestorm didn't die down as quickly as it had risen. Jordan's words stuck in the public's consciousness, but so did the criticisms. As the backlash continued, Zen Tech began to experience a strange combination of increased visibility and mounting pressure. For every investor pulling out, new ones were stepping in, those who saw the value in Jordan's message and were eager to be a part of the change he was pushing for. The company became a symbol, not just of innovation in tech, but of the power of standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. Jordan began speaking at industry panels and community forums, using his platform to shine a light on the biases and barriers that still existed in the tech world. He didn't just want to create the next big tech company. He wanted to shift the culture in the industry, to ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion weren't just buzzwords but realities for the future. Jordan knew that the road ahead would be difficult. The forces that tried to silence him would continue to push back. But he was ready. Zen Tech's success wasn't just a win for him. It was a win for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't make it. His mission was bigger than any corporate deal, any contract. It was about changing the system. He wasn't about to let this moment slip away. "I'm not stopping," Jordan said one evening as he walked through the office, his staff gathered around. "We're just getting started. This conversation, this movement, it's only going to grow, and we're going to lead it, no matter what it takes." As the days turned into weeks, Zen Tech did more than just survive the storm. They thrived. The media attention had brought in new clients, new partnerships, and a renewed sense of purpose. Jordan was not only fighting for the future of his company, he was fighting for the future of every entrepreneur who didn't fit the mold, for the future of diversity in business, and for the hope that success could one day be measured not by race or background, but by the work and passion put into the endeavor. Jordan Carter's decision to stand firm in the face of overwhelming pressure was not just a personal choice, it was a movement. And that movement was only just beginning.